All right, so this picks up where we left off on the lab genetics problems. We finished the monohybrid and dihybrid crosses, and now we're going to start here with a sex-linked cross. All right, so it's talking about hemophilia, which is a recessive mutation on the X chromosome. And the first thing that you have to do here is determine the genotype of the female in this instance. Well, it says, let's see, the marriage of two non-hemophiliac parents, a bleeder son is born. So someone that has hemophilia. So since it's recessive, if she is a non-hemophiliac, then we know that her genotype must be this. So since it's recessive, the normal allele is overshadowing it in her case. But then she's able to pass this version on to the son, who is a bleeder. And it's asking if they could have a possible daughter that could be a bleeder, and asking to complete the Punnett square on the next page in order to figure that out. So, dad is here. You know that because of the Y chromosome. And we determine mom's phenotype is this. So in this instance, this is going to be a normal female. This child would be a carrier for hemophilia, but have a normal phenotype. This would be a normal male. And this is a male with hemophilia. So for the male, the genotypic percents would be, you've got 50% X big NY and 50% X little ny. So this means you've got 50% normal males and 50% bleeders or males with hemophilia. For the females, you're going to have 50% homozygous normal and 50% heterozygous, but still normal phenotype. So 100% normal females. All right, so then moving on to the next sex-linked practice problem. So it's with color blindness. It says in humans, red-green color blindness, represented by the recessive allele, so it's a small r, is an example of a sex-linked recessive trait. In this problem, a colorblind male marries a female who's not colorblind, but her father was colorblind. Using a Punnett square, determine the genotypic and phenotypic probabilities for their potential offspring. So first you have to come up with the genotypes of the parents. Our key, little r, it's colorblind, big R, it's normal. And a colorblind male, so we know for sure that his genotype, the cross here, his genotype is, well, that's too big. So that's his genotype. And it says marries a female who's not colorblind, so we know for sure, you have to kind of make the X to represent the cross smaller when you're doing sex-linked. We know for sure that she has at least one normal allele, but it says that her father was colorblind, so that he could only give her one X, so it had to have been this one. So that's the parental cross. And so now we're going to set up the Punnett square. And we'll put that up here. And mom over here. Oops. It does not look like an X. And it asks to determine the genotypic and phenotypic probabilities for their potential offspring. So for the female, oops, we've got 50% heterozygous and 50% homozygous recessive. So 50% of the females are going to be colorblind and 50% are going to be normal. For the males, which that's these two, we've got 50% that have the dominant allele, 50% that have the recessive allele. So it's going to be 50% colorblind, I'm going to abbreviate it for space, and 50% normal. All right, the next one. In fruit flies, red eye color is dominant to white eyes. And a cross between two flies, 50% of the males and 50% of the female offspring had red eyes. The other half of the males and females had white eyes. What are the phenotype and all possible genotypes of the offspring? And it doesn't tell us in the wording that it's sex-linked, but it's still in the sex-linked section, so we're going to go with that. So red eye color dominant to white, 50%. Right, so let's do our key. Big R is red, little r is white. And in this case, we're given the phenotype. So we've got 50% red and 50% white for both male and female. And we know that in order to have white, the females would have had to have been, and the male like this. In order for it to be red, the male would have to be like this, and the female, and we can leave this one open for right now, because it could be, for the female to have red eyes, it could be heterozygous or homozygous dominant. So now let's work backwards through our Punnett square and see what our possible parental genotypes were. And then we can know for sure about that female. All right, so we know that we had, these have to be, in order to have a male that is 50% red, this box would have to be this. So that means we've got a dominant allele over here, and this box would have to be this. So that means this was the mother. And in order for this genotype to occur, this would have had to have been a little r, which makes this one. So now we can go back over here. We can replace our, oh shoot. Can erase our little dash and replace it with a small r, because we know that the genotype is heterozygous. So this was really similar to the problem before it, except for this time we worked backwards. We were given the phenotypes and had to use deductive reasoning and what we've learned about Punnett squares to work backwards and determine the genotypes of the parents and also the possible genotypes of the offspring. All right, so now we're going to get into codominance and multiple alleles. So we're looking at blood type. And your key is essentially up here. It's saying that blood type is determined by 3 possible alleles, like I talked about in lecture, A, B, or the recessive, which is O. Now, A and B are codominant, and O is recessive. So the 2 genotypes possible for a person with A-type blood would be homozygous dominant or heterozygous, but not with B. It would be with the I, this lowercase I. So for AB blood, it would have to be this combination. And for O blood and for B blood, there's 2 possible combinations, the same as with A. And so this is the situation that's codominant. And it's considered multiple alleles because there's the A, the B, and the recessive, which is essentially the O. A man with type AB blood is married to a woman also with type AB blood. What percentages will their children have? Well, let's set up a square. All right, so what percentage have A blood? We'll just shade these as we go. This would be the A blood percent. So 25%. You can also see that 25% have B blood. And then this leaves this 50% AB blood. And in this case, 0% have O blood. All right, and here's another example. A man with type B blood, genotype BB, is married to a woman with type O blood. What blood type will their children have? And they're all going to have the same blood type, but we'll still do a quick square so that you can see it. So all of these children are going to have B blood. And the genotype of the children, as you can see from our square, is this. A woman with type A blood, heterozygous genotype, so that means she is married to a heterozygous type B person. What proportion of their children will have, and it's asking you the different blood types. So let's set up the square. All right, so in this instance, A blood, this would be A blood, so that's 25%. O blood, 25%, B blood, 25%, and AB blood is 25%. A woman with type A blood is claiming that a man with type AB blood is the father of her child who is type B. Could this man be the father of the child? Well, if his blood type is AB, then there's only one possible genotype for him. And so that he's going to be, she could be 2 blood types, because she could either be this one or this one. So the way to figure this out is to do a cross and determine whether or not in either of these instances she could have had a child with this guy that had type B blood. So let's look at the first one first. I'll zoom way in. Now, if you get good at this, you may be able to skip some of these steps because you'll be able to just look at it and know what is and isn't possible. But we're going to go through all the steps just in case people need it. All right, so this would be the outcome of this cross. All right, so in this case, it's going to be 50% A blood and 50% B blood. Oh, excuse me, AB blood. So this would not work. If that's her genotype, that wouldn't work. So now we can try the other one. All right, so now we've got 25% chance A blood. Actually 50% because this would be A blood as well. %, AB, and right here, 25% chance that it's B-type blood. So, could this man be the father of the child? If her genotype is this, that answer would be yes. Show the possible crosses. Oh, well, I already did that. I showed that she could be homozygous. That was the first example that I did. This has her as homozygous or heterozygous. That's what this example shows. And the crosses then were, this was the first cross, and this was the second cross. And in order for him to be the father, as we just showed, his genotype, or her genotype, has to be heterozygous.